comes overnight, softly, without a shout. If you enjoy this calm space, tap like and subscribe so these sleepy explorations can keep you company whenever you need them. You can also let a playlist play in the background from the description and keep learning softly while you drift. How sleepy are you on a scale of 1 to 10? Imagine yourself in a vast echoing habitat at the edge of a dust-swept plain. The habitat is warm compared to the thin, brittle air outside. There is the faint metallic scent of clean machinery and the soft whisper of fans that never stop. A low, steady hum folds around you like a blanket. A small indicator light glows a gentle green. Beyond the thick window, the sky is a pale, muted orange, and the ground is an endless expanse of fine powder that remembers every footstep for a very long time. You feel the weight of your body just slightly lighter than you expect, so footsteps are slow, deliberate, almost floaty. This place is not a dramatic frontier with triumphant flags and shining band music. It is a workshop. It is a garden under glass. It is a long, unbroken line of little tasks, each one modest and fully necessary. You check the first list of the day. There is a checklist on a slate that feels smooth and slightly cool to the touch. The first item asks you to inspect the seal along a corridor where temperature and pressure sometimes disagree with the plan. The seal looks fine, but you trace your finger along it anyway, feeling for a whisper of a leak that would be too small to see. There is no rush. The soft rhythm of the inspection calms your thoughts. The second item is a filter change for a small scrubber that quietly sips carbon dioxide from the air and returns oxygen to the room. You turn a latch with a gentle click. You slide out the old filter, heavier than the new one, because it has been doing its quiet work. You slide the new one in. The gentle hum continues. Terraforming often appears in stories as a grand sweep. A switch is imagined, and the world transforms. In truth, imagine a string of tiny beads, and each bead is one adjustment, one measurement, one careful record. The chain grows, hour by hour, year by year, the way a coastline accumulates shells. If you seek heroics here, you find small, steady motions instead. A hand on a valve that opens as slowly as a yawn. A brush moving across dusty solar panels with consistent strokes. A reel of cable paid out one measured meter at a time. Mars waits like a quiet neighbor on the other side of a thin fence of night. It has almost no magnetic shield, very little air, and a cold that smooths sounds and slows everything down. The air is mostly carbon dioxide, wispy and chill, the way breath appears on a winter morning. Sunlight is weaker here. The days stretch a little longer than on Earth, and seasons shift gently due to a tilt not so different from home. Terraforming, in the simplest whisper, would mean thickening the air, warming it, finding a way to keep what is made from slipping away again. It means adding and balancing, measuring and adjusting, letting time do its part. The planet offers raw materials, rocks, ice locked in shadowed soil, ancient minerals that remember the steam of a distant those materials are stubborn and quiet. They do not leap to help. They respond to patient work. Imagine yourself smoothing a thin line of grease along the hinge of a pressure hatch. The grease has a soft smell like clay and faint citrus. Your hand moves slowly, leaving a glossy track that catches the light. You check a gauge. You note the reading in a logbook where the pages are thick and off-white, and the pen glides without scratching. Outside, a small rover ticks with cooling, as if it has been sighing after a long day. Its wheels carry the dust of months. You brush the dust from a joint with a gentle brush, making soft arcs. The brush strokes are repetitive, like waves brushing ashore, and the shore does not complain. Before people speak of oceans on Mars, they would speak of soil, and before soil, they would speak of the powder that lies everywhere and behaves like talcum. Soil is not just ground. Soil is a living memory of leaves and water, of microbes and worms, of cycles that have learned to whisper to each other over time. So one would begin with regolith, the sharp particles of ancient basalt, and one would sieve it and rinse it, and sometimes one would wash away persnickety chemicals that are not friendly to tender roots. The rinsing would be small and careful, repeated in trays and basins under lights that mimic day and lamps that mimic the red edge of sunsets. You would mix the cleaned grains with compost made from everything that can be safely returned to the system. Plant stems, vegetable peels, a little paper, a little fibre, all chopped into soft bits that rustle faintly. You would add microbes that smell faintly earthy, and you would tuck them in with warmth and moisture, as if you were folding a blanket. The gentle rhythm continues. In one corner of the habitat, there are algae tubes draped in rows like calm green ribbons. They gurgle gently, the sound soft and regular. Light filters through them, and the color shifts with the angle of your step, green to emerald to moss. The algae eat carbon dioxide and give oxygen. They thicken slowly, and now and then a valve opens with a quiet sigh, and the mixture flows along a line to a separator, where light bubbles rise in a clear column like tiny pearls. You check the pH with a strip of paper that changes color with a calm predictability, and you write down the number in the log. The gentle rhythm continues. To add warmth to Mars, one might consider letting the air hold more heat, but the air is thin, so one might build large, layered glass, spanning valleys, to create parks of mild air where the world outside remains unchanged. Monarchs of steel and glass are not necessary, just careful panels supported by struts that flex gently with wind and temperature, anchored into rock with bolts that you might tighten one small turn at a time. If someone speaks of mirrors in space, large and pale, guiding a little more sunlight down, the romance fades into a checklist quickly. You think of surface dust, of static, of slow rotations, of motors that must not stall, of keeping everything within the gentle bounds of a design that forgives small errors and keeps going anyway. Or someone might speak of aerogel blankets spread over ice to trap warmth, the way frost traps dew. The image is fun, but again you feel the texture of it in your mind, the quilt of small panels, each one placed with care, each one checked for seams, each one being a project with a serial number, a storage is not a drumbeat, it is a slow water clock. Carbon dioxide warms, then condenses at the poles in winter, then sublimates in spring. If you add pressure, the cycles shift, like a tide that arrives a little higher each year. If you add gases that trap heat, that trap becomes a little stronger. Measures are taken, models are run quietly in the background. The numbers advance a few decimals, then pause, then edge forward again. People write notes that say, "within expected bounds," and that phrase is surprisingly satisfying at the end of a day. The gentle rhythm continues. Nitrogen is a special matter. On Earth, nitrogen floats in such quiet abundance that we forget to notice. But on Mars, it is scarce, tucked into minerals and rocks, as if hidden seeds remain to be coaxed out. Lean air makes life thirsty. So someone might plan to bring nitrogen from elsewhere, to mine it from comets, or to extract it from certain rocks with heat and patience. A small group might slowly fill tanks that clink softly as they cool. They might test the valves, listen for the hush that means nothing is escaping, secure the tanks in brackets that hold with quiet confidence, log the mass, record the pressure, and send the shipment to another module, where the air is thickened by a whisper, not a gust. Imagine the slow accumulation of breath, the incremental comfort of leaves that do not curl at the edges, of people who do not feel the slight dryness in their throat. That change is not visible in a single glance. It is the difference between two quiet mornings, months apart. People imagine the heroic arrival of water, but transport is a long series of ordinary decisions. Ice can be melted, filtered, tasted chemically rather than by tongue. Each step has a signature: the soft chime of a pump, the ripple of flow through a transparent panel, the gentle change in weight of a reservoir you hold in your hands, a liter container that you gently rock and feel the water shift with a subdued slosh. The water is softened, polished, recirculated, used carefully by plants, reclaimed through breath and condensation, reclaimed again in a cycle that becomes familiar enough to lull you. In a place where every molecule matters, every valve is patiently nurtured, you feel the smoothing of that care on your mind, the way a well-kept path is easier to walk over time. Dust is constant, like grey snow that never melts. Panels gather it the way a book gathers a thin coat if left untouched. You imagine yourself with a soft electrostatic brush moving across the panels in tall, even strokes. Your boots leave shallow prints. Your gloves make a faint rasping sound as they slide across a handrail warmed by sunlight. Each afternoon, you return to the battery room, where a faint smell like warm stone greets you, and you check the charge levels and balance the loads with a fingertip slide on a slow, responsive control. The gentle rhythm continues. Waste is a word that fades in this environment because refuse becomes resource. Leaves that have yellowed are clipped, chopped, digested by friendly microbes that give off heat as a byproduct. becomes a small closet, and you know exactly where to stand to warm your hands for a moment. Light hums on in the bioreactors. You test clarity, and you write numbers that become almost musical in their repetition. 7273, 7273. The little variances are a kind of heartbeat. You learn to sense when something is off by a small smell, by a subtle change in the texture of a bubble line, by a shade of green that tells a story. Now imagine someone talking about a planetary magnetic shield, and you can feel how grand that sounds. In the reality of the workshop, it becomes coils, wound with steady precision, wire that flows through your hands with a texture like tiny fish scales, copper upon copper, insulating layers pressed without haste. Instruments measure currents with crisp confidence, while a fan moves air across the housings. Switches are tested one at a time. Part of the coil hums, while the other parts simply wait. The device is not the planet's guardian. It is a machine that needs cleaning and observation. Dust collects here too. The edges warm slightly. Someone notes that the temperature rises a fraction of a degree after 3 hours, then steadies. A plot line forms, smooth and satisfying. Progress is felt in the calm of numbers that do not jump. Outside the habitat, small patches of para-terraformed space might appear over time, domes with air thick enough to allow bare faces and the soft sound of human breath. Inside these domes, you imagine carefully chosen grasses bowed under gentle breeze from fans. The air smells faintly of damp earth and cut leaves. The temperature is mild enough to make you forget your heavy suit. But this little park is fragile, and the caretaking is constant. You might spend an hour checking seams. You might kneel to examine soil moisture in the shade of a quiet tree. You might watch tiny insects that were brought along as part of the experiment, carefully contained, and their soft progress through the roots is counted not in minutes, but in weeks and months. You tuck a small sensor into the ground and let its little LED blink a soft, slow rhythm. The gentle rhythm continues. You drift for a moment, imagining the grand arcs of terraforming, centuries of work. Then you return to a desk where a slow computer runs a simulation, and a small animation shows the thin air growing denser by single digits spread across thin lines. You sip a warm drink, slightly sweet and slightly grainy, and the sip carries the comfort of home into a place that is mostly new. You place the cup down and hear the faint rubbery sound of it connecting with the countertop. Nothing is loud here. Even achievement arrives softly. Venus is a different, quiet story. Imagine a world where the clouds are heavy and the air squeezes strong enough to turn metal weary. Down below, the ground is almost inaccessibly hot. But above, in the cooler layers, there are plains of air where a floating city could drift, not romantic like a castle in the sky, but sensible like a blimp that minds its balance. In that space, tasks would be as regular as breathing. Inspect the envelope fabric for the finest hairline wear. Check line tension with a small gauge that clicks home when the measurement is right. Balance ballast one measured step at a time, letting the craft settle in a stable equilibrium that takes the stress away spot. Small adjustments keep them aligned, the way a gardener pulls away weeds before they grow tall. A technician in a quiet room would decide if a panel tilt is by 1/4 of a degree or half. Log the change, listen to the soft acknowledgement ping, and move on to the next. On the moon, there is no air at all to speak of. It is crisp and quiet and bright when the sun is out, deeply still when the long night comes. Terraforming in the older sense does not belong there, but gentle shaping of livable pockets does. Imagine a tunnel under ancient lava flows, a tube carved by long-vanished fire. In that tunnel, people build. Panels that glow warmly line the surface, and pipes run along the wall like calm rivers, carrying air and water carefully adjusted to suit. You hold a light to examine a small white scuff on a gasket. You sand it smooth with a fine pad. You whisper an apology to the gasket, as if it could hear, and feel oddly comforted by the thought. That pad makes a faint powdery sound, like a delicate brush on paper. The gentle rhythm continues. Across all these places the pattern repeats. Iteration, maintenance, records, small repairs. The work is not an anthem, it is a lullaby. And in the lullaby, science is steady. You think of greenhouse gases not as a drama, but as absorption lines, as bridges that hold on to warmth. You think of radiation not as a roar, but as a gentle drizzle that asks for an umbrella held at just the right angle. You think of microbes not as heroes, but as roommates who prefer consistency in light, temperature, and their favorite snacks. So you give them that consistency, one tray, one tube, one beaker at a time. One. Inside the habitat, there is a box the size of a suitcase that quietly turns ammonia into nitrate for plants. It has a soft hum and a tiny panel that shows a row of numbers that rise and fall within their assigned garden. Weaknesses in the system are not dramatic. They are a little clump that forms in a feed tube, a foam that rises a little too high in a separation column, a motor that runs less smoothly when the day is colder. You learn the sounds. You learn that if you tap a casing gently with 2 knuckles, you can hear a difference that predicts a maintenance task next week. Your body becomes a sensor too, its ears and fingers tuning to the habitat the way a musician tunes to an instrument. The gentle rhythm continues. Imagine the logistics of capturing small, icy bodies for water or gas. The popular image is of a splendid arc of a comet, luminous and grand. In the workspace of reality, it is the calm progression of navigation windows, each one a date in a calendar, each one a small delta V, planned and executed with tidy notation. It is the careful tethering of an object, the smoothing of vibration along a line, the slow evaporation of volatiles directed into a tank. Valves are opened in sequence. Heaters are applied in steps, making sure no stress cracks form. Sensors are checked and their calibration is logged with the comfortable monotony of quality control. People yawn, stretch, and move on. The gentle rhythm continues. In a greenhouse on Mars, gets the netting that keeps it near the plants it tends. You breathe in the subtle scent of herbs, and the scent is better than triumph. If someone extends the idea from planetary scale down to the small things we already do on Earth, the story becomes even more soothing. A wastewater plant glides through its routine with pools and skimmers, with gentle blowers pushing air through liquid, with clarifiers turning slow circles. You stand on a concrete walkway and you feel a soft breeze. The water below looks calm, but it is full of invisible activity, and that activity is serene. Every pipe has a label. Every label is tidy. Every instrument knows its role. There is pride in a system that hums within its bounds, and that pride is a pillow for the mind. On a coastline, quiet work continues. Mangrove saplings are planted with deliberate, repetitive motion. Holes are dug to a consistent depth. Small roots are tucked in. Water laps. The sun makes the water sparkle without dazzling your eyes. Records are kept of survival rates month by month, season by season. A line trends upward slowly. The gentle rhythm continues. Further inland, a team of people restore a wetland by adjusting channels a few centimeters at a time, laying down choir mats, anchoring them with wooden pegs that press into the earth with a muted crunch. Bird calls drift like soft bells in the background. You breathe the damp, leafy scent that rises from the newly wetted soil. It smells calm. In years to come, water will spread out more slowly in heavy rains, and grasses will wave in a breeze that makes a low shushing sound. But the work tonight is merely to measure the slope with a small bubble level and pack your tools away neatly. Now your mind drifts gently into the more speculative edges of big projects. In your imagination, there is a space-based shield at a Lagrange point, and you see that the reality of it is not its size, but its service record, the steady schedule of painting, of dust removal, of angular momentum management, as smooth as a good night's sleep. Someone watches a graph that plots torque against time, and the shape of that line is pleasing. Someone else oversees gyros that spin invisibly, their bearings softly whispering for oil that will not evaporate. Each time a small operation completes, a quiet tone sounds, not loud, just enough to say, yes, this piece has closed its loop. Inside an observatory on a mountain, long before any planet is moved or any mirror is launched, daily care is identical in spirit. The dome rolls with a slow, beaded sound. The lens or mirror is cleaned by a steady hand in a clean room where the air is filtered and the light is bright and diffuse. Dust is the same everywhere, familiar and calmly persistent. The calibrations are done the same way every night, with reference lamps and dark frames and flats that teach the instrument to see what is not signal. The log reads like a poem of repetition. Exposure, bias, read out. Exposure, bias, read out. In the middle of the night, a cup of tea grows lukewarm on a counter, and the person on watch notes a small drift in focus and corrects it by a barely perceptible turn. The gentle rhythm continues. You might imagine other practicalities of a future terraform. Basalt weathering that captures carbon slow mineral form. The rocks are ground, not in heroic waves of dust, but through steady, controlled milling that makes heaters warm the cold night of a machine shop. Bags are sealed neatly. Air is kept free of the finest dust, so lungs remain content. Piles are spread, and the changes occur the way paint dries, quietly, invisibly, and then suddenly you see the surface is different than it was an hour ago, though you did not watch it happen. People make notes with pencils that scratch softly. No one rushes. The gentle rhythm continues. At another station, small metal parts are printed layer by harmonious layer. The print head moves with a soft mechanical song. When the part is done, it is still warm, and you lift it wearing thin gloves that smell faintly of new plastic. Burrs are sanded away with a slow, circular motion until the edge is as smooth as your thumb expects it to be. You place the part into a bin lined with foam. You label it with neat handwriting that feels satisfying. Someone speaks of delivering new greenhouse gases to a planet to warm it. They propose fluorinated compounds that lull in the air and trap heat effectively. The way that becomes real is a shelf of small reactors where temperatures and pressures are held steady for days and weeks, where samples are taken with syringes that click softly and are stored in vials that clink faintly like distant chimes. The venting is controlled. The capture is tidy. The safety steps are repeated until they become a song. The gentle rhythm continues. There is a laboratory test for radiation shielding using layers of water, plastic, and rock. Thin sensors measure counts that tick with the regularity of a clock, and those counts are logged on a worksheet that looks almost like the weather. You study the data in the yellowish light of a desk lamp. The hum outside the lab is the same hum everywhere else. A small sticker near your station reads, "Slow is smooth," and you smile at it because that is how you like to move too. Think for a moment of the people living within such projects. Their day begins with a gentle chime. They sit up, the bedding rustles softly. They stretch, and their body reminds them of the slightly lower gravity, their hands drifting a little too high at first. They put on soft shoes that whisper on the floor. They wander to a galley where a warm breakfast smells faintly nutty and sweet. Steam curls upward in small, delicate ribbons. They glance at the schedule and see tasks that would look a little repetitive to anyone who has not learned to find comfort in repetition. The tasks have names that are almost affectionate now. Panel 7R, Valve 3C, Bubbler 2, Dome 9 window latches, Soil bed 4 moisture profile, Battery 1 balancing. The list is soft, almost friendly. Midday, outside on the plain, the wind makes fine streaks in the dust. The sky is a gentle canopy, colourless at the zenith and softly tinted nearer the horizon. The person checks a small mast that holds weather instruments like delicate ornaments. The mast is smooth under their gloved hand. They wipe tiny bits of dust from a sensor with a brush that looks like a makeup brush, and they do it with the ease of someone brushing hair from a sleeping child's forehead. The gentle rhythm continues. During a long afternoon, inside the lab, there is a pipette, and it clicks with its own soft music. Each ceramic sound is gentle and familiar. In the slow orbit of an aerostat on Venus, the caretaking is similar. Morning is measured by the change in light through the golden haze outside, and the way a thin edge of brightness moves across the wall. A list appears, the same as ever. Inspect envelope seam 14, check micro leak on tie-down spool. Equalize internal pressure by a hair. The beautiful word is nominal, and it is the compliment everyone wants. A soft beep acknowledges a nominal reading. A small green bar remains within its comfort zone. If a sensor fails, it is not a crisis but a quiet replacement. A small drawer opens. Labeled boxes sit within, their labels neat and lined up. One sensor is chosen, and the old one is laid next to it as if introducing friends. The old one is put aside gently, to be cleaned and perhaps repaired. The new one snaps into place with a subdued click. Numbers drift back into their usual lines. The gentle rhythm continues. In the quiet dark of interplanetary ships, there are the same disciplines. Cables are tied with soft loops that look like tender knots on a gift. Liquids move through transparent tubes as if they are thinking about where they want to go. The air smells like clean fabric and a touch of antiseptic. Not unpleasant. Velcro whispers when you remove a tool, and then whispers again when you replace it. A log record scrolls across a small screen with date, time, action, result, all arranged in columns that make a soothing pattern. The people on board read and write without haste. You trace a mental map of carbon captured in rock and outgassed back to air by volcanoes that push up damply under ancient plains, and you remember that there is no switch labeled terraform. There are only carefully placed lines in code, carefully stacked stones in a wall, carefully timed pulses in a thruster. But the combined effect of these small things, across years, almost always surprises by being more than seemed possible. Gentle accumulation is like the filling of a reservoir. The last bucket looks like the triumph, though all the earlier buckets count exactly the same. The gentle rhythm continues. A team discussing climate engineering will often spend entire afternoons adjusting the constraints of their model. The screen shows 1,000 tiny outputs. They choose runs that take all night, and in the morning they find the lines have smoothed or broken where they expected. They print a spreadsheet with a sound like rain. They highlight a row, then another. They do not talk excitedly. They point, nod, sip something warm, and make a note in the margin for a future self who will read it and nod again. If anyone outside asks for a story of drama, the team has none. They have quiet satisfaction instead, which is enough, even when an idea leans into science fiction, like thick green worlds emerging from red deserts. It is useful to remember the backlog of tasks behind any transformation. There are thousands of seals in a single habitat, and each seal ages at its own soft pace. Someone corrections. Filters are changed on schedule. Light leaks are hunted and sealed. Monitors click softly. A shift log is passed from hand to hand. No one expects to see something astonishing at any given moment. They expect to keep the system ready so that the rare can be noticed at all. Back on Mars, if you walk along a corridor, you might hear the soft squeak of a cart carrying tools. The cart has drawers that glide open on clean rails. Inside, there are small wrenches with their sizes engraved neatly. You choose one by feel before you look, because your fingers remember the shape. You tighten a fitting by a fraction of a turn. You watch a pressure number settle down into a comfortable range. You smile at the number, and the number, indifferent, continues to be what it is. The gentle rhythm continues. In the hydroponic room, little streams trickle with a sound like sleep. The water carries dissolved minerals that match a recipe composed of quiet decisions. Some nitrate, some potassium, some phosphorus, a little iron collide for that gentle green that leaves prefer. Each nutrient is added with a measured scoop that falls softly and spreads in the water like fine snow. The recipe is adjusted with changes in the measured uptake. There is treating it like a kitchen and treating it like a lab, both at once, both equally tender. Under the lights, leaves turn their faces to the brightness. That turning is slow, the way the hours move across a drowsy afternoon. The scale of terraforming could include redirecting small bodies in space. The thought carries weight, but the actual tasks are in software tracking windows, in reaction control thrusters that hiss with little puffs, in refueling small tanks, in polishing the surfaces of sensors so that sunlight does not bloom across them, in replacing a small component after it has done its quiet duty for years. If you imagine a single day of that work, you see 2 or 3 small course corrections and a dozen checks. If something deviates slightly, a note is made. Repeat measurement in 6 hours. 6 hours pass under a sky that does what it always does. The measurement is repeated, and the value is unremarkable once more. The gentle rhythm continues. Some will wonder privately how long any of this would take. The honest answer belongs to the same family as forest growth, as soil formation, as coral reefs that lay down almost invisible layers of stone. It is long enough to measure with calendars that outlast careers. The arc of the project is generational. The pride of the individual is in adding a bead to a string that winds farther than one pair of hands can hold. The thought is, I turned a knob 1 degree, and 10 years later the system was more stable, and that is enough to warm an evening. It is kindness to a future person you might never meet. In Antarctica, people drill ice cores for climate history. The drill is not loud. It has its own calm sound when it is happy. The core rises slowly, cylinder by lovely cylinder, glimpses of ancient air trapped like soft punctuation marks. The cores are catalogued with neat handwriting. Velvety foam cradles them. That cradling resembles the care in any long project. Protect the record. Make the next step easier because you did your step well today. The gentle rhythm continues. On a shop bench surface tension breaks. The actuator is rotated by hand, not quickly, until it moves freely. That is the whole task. It is not a story with a twist. It is a momentary weaving of reliability into the larger fabric. You imagine yourself in a maintenance bay, under a dome. Airflows are mapped by a slow-moving mist that snakes along like a calm river. You watch the mist drift around corners and through gaps. You gently adjust a diffuser plate until the mist flows the way you want it to. There is something straightening about that small success. The body and mind find contentment in the alignment of intention and result. In long-term agriculture, on a new world, the tedium is simply the texture of life. Seeds are plugged into small holes in foam or set gently into cups of fine substrate. The planting tool is simple and pleasing. It makes a soft, consistent sound. Sprouts appear on a timetable that becomes as familiar as your own morning routine. The first 2 leaves are heart-shaped. Somewhere in your schedule, you note that detail every time and feel a tiny glow. Not everything is measured on the demanding scale of climate. Some is measured in leaves. If you set aside terraforming for a moment and drift into the calm of ridiculously precise Earth projects, the theme continues. A gravitational wave detector keeps its mirrors still and shining. The corridors are long and quiet as a cathedral. Air is dry and the smell is faintly clean, nothing more. The most exciting things are the least visible. People go about replacing a small air filter with the gentle care of a dentist brushing a child's tooth. They monitor the laser's frequency like horologists listening to a clock. The numbers either match the expectation or they ask for a small adjustment. The adjustment is made without drama. The gentle rhythm continues. Back to Mars, the discussion of atmospheric escape leads to small magnets. The design and redesign of coils, their placement over poles in the thin air or in small satellites, is not a battle. It is a sketch turned into a diagram, turned into a part sitting on a bench. It is the slow winding of wire and the reassuring tap of epoxy drying, the smell faintly sweet. It is the waiting for vacuum baking to finish. The oven pings one time. The door opens with a soft sigh. The coil is gently lifted out and examined. Someone says, "That will do nicely." The coil goes into a box and the box goes into the supply room, labelled and ready. Imagine how pictures and videos might show this work to anyone back on Earth. The videos would not contain crowds cheering. They would show hands in gloves, slow test, repetitive motions, boots that leave careful arcs of print. They would show a logbook page filled with straight lines and tidy numbers. They might show a person pausing with a flour-dusted hand over dough in a galley, because baking bread remains a perfect human pastime, even in thin air. Bread rises slowly. Bread brings a warm smell that makes the habitat feel less like a machine and more like a home. The methods of closed-loop life support are always tender. Exhaled air becomes plant food. Plant breath becomes ours again. Water cycles like a small indoor rain. filters are replaceable, gaskets are checked, light cycles match circadian rhythms for comfort. A quiet piece of software dims lights in the evening to a reassuring amber glow and brightens them in the morning with a powdery white that feels like the first hint of dawn in a bedroom. Alarm tones are chosen to be gentle, never jarring, because the whole place thrives on calm. Perhaps you are ready for a small interlude, like a slow walk at night where every footstep finds the same patient path. Still awake, comment the secret word, nebula. You return to the topic with fresh comfort. Terraforming is simply stewardship in a far place. The stewards show up, touch surfaces that others would not know how to touch, interpret sounds that might otherwise be ignored, ease stresses before they grow. They accept that the reward is the consistency of a graph that does not wobble, the resilience of a system that carries on through small surprises, the presence of green where before there was only ochre. If the world beyond Mars is on your mind, think of icy moons. On Europa, a future caretaker might wander corridors, warmed to comfort inside, while outside, a crust of ice lies under a sky of black and stars bright as pinpricks. There would be a drill head that needs its cutters polished, a heater coil that asks for a check, a pump that needs a new seal. The ocean below would be patient, vast, beyond direct reach most days, but the small interfaces between our tools and that sea would be groomed until they match, until the water allows a sample to rise like a gift. The gentle rhythm continues. On Titan, a nitrogen-rich world, climate and chemistry are a quiet marvel. There could be slow operations to distill gases, to adjust mixtures for breathable air. Every fraction in a distillation column would be a calm plateau. Sensors would line the column like beads on a thread. Lights would rise and fall along the column as conditions drifted slightly, then settled. A caretaker would lean against a rail, feel the faint vibration through their forearm, and read the room with their skin as much as with their eyes. The control screens would show tidy bars. The air would smell faintly of polymer and new paint. Plastic becomes a soft, friendly material when kept clean and under control. The gentle rhythm continues. On Earth, where long projects already unfold, coral restoration involves small fragments placed carefully, attached with gentle adhesives that cure slowly without harm. Divers float with minimal effort, their movements slow and deliberate. They attend to small branches and record GPS coordinates, water temperature, and clarity in a log that won't be dramatic to read, but will help plan the next visit. In a desert, someone tends to a field of saplings under drip irrigation that flicks quietly at a steady interval, a kind of metronome for growth. Rows of plants reach upward 2 centimeters more this week. The caretaker gives them a nod. Inside a space habitat, mundane tasks feel like rituals. Velcro tabs keep utensils from wandering. Containers are labeled with letters so familiar the hand that wrote them feels like a friend. Someone ties back a cable with a loop so clean it looks like calligraphy. Tools are returned to their places by habit, because later someone might come half asleep to find them. The tool candles wait the way a kettle waits on a stove, useful and comfortingly ordinary. The gentle rhythm continues. Many worry about the risk of boredom, but boredom and boredom's cousin, tedium, are distinct. Tedium here is not a void. It is texture. It holds you steady. It is the soft white noise of a fan, the repetitive comfort of a washing machine, the cycles of a thermostat that keeps the room how you like it. In a harsh environment, the antidote to drama is tedium, and it is welcome. It is not dullness. It is safety. It is the quiet hum that says, the system loves to be taken care of, and it shows its gratitude by working. In a small machine room, a wall of gauges sits in a grid, each needle inside its rightful zone, all adding up to reassurance. The person on duty runs fingertips along the edges of panels, feeling for warmth or vibration. Their touch is feather-light. They go slowly, not skipping any spot. When they reach the end of the wall, they return to the beginning and go again, because that is what they do every few hours. The gentle rhythm continues. Somewhere else, a person watches the slow freeze and thaw at a pole. They have a map where colour spreads in and out with the season. They measure the exact timing of this breath of a planet. There is beauty in the precision of the timing and the small shifts that happen over years, a kind of quiet conversation with the world. It feels personal, though the world does not aim to be personal. The conversation is comfortable anyway. An enormous crop of work is simply cleaning. Cleaning is not an afterthought. It is the heartbeat. Dust brushes off of seals. Lint disappears from intakes. Transparent covers become transparent again. A cloth moves in slow arcs over a screen, leaving it faintly damp for a moment, then dry. Each cleaned surface removes a small source of error and increases the chances of an ordinary day. Ordinary is precious here. In the grander idea of terraforming, one might include large-scale structures that transform climates, but their construction is modular. Boxes arrive, panels are unpacked and aligned, cables click together with connectors that feel satisfying, as if they were made to be friends and finally met. Testing sequences scroll across screens as if reading a bedtime story. Test 1 okay, test 2 okay, test 3 okay. When something is not okay, it is gently set aside until the time and tools to address it come available. No one gnashes teeth. There is no running. There is scheduling, pencil lines on calendars, and small updates to manuals that will make the job easier next time. The gentle rhythm continues. Future terraforming might ask for living ecosystems to be mixed into new places. That mixing is a tapestry woven one thread at a time. A bacterium that digests a component of the regolith is introduced in a contained space. Its growth is monitored quietly. A fungus that shares nutrients with plant roots is added with more careful notes. A small worm tests the soil. A few individuals only. Not many and not soon. And their comfort is measured in the way they move. You imagine a little movement, a small curling, a gentle retreat from light. You dim the light. The worm returns to the work of making tunnels and leaves schedule and eating little snacks that keep the mind gentle and steady. The snacks sit in small packets with pleasing textures that crinkle softly. The gentle rhythm continues. In the far corner of a lab, a scientist measures the rate at which basalt dissolves in slightly acidic water at a certain temperature. They murmur to themselves as the numbers settle, not words of excitement, but small encouragements like someone might say to a dough rising in a bowl. They tap a tube to release an air bubble. They calibrate pH again. The contraption that holds everything is not glamorous. It is stable. It has clamps that hold without pinching too hard. The hoses do not twist up. The cords are tidy. There is a happiness in an uncluttered bench. If you imagine Mars in 100 years, you might imagine a few more patches of green under glass, several more habitats connected by tunnels, a little more air, but not enough to notice outside without instruments. Yet inside, comfort increases. Inside, tedium is still the theme, but now more of it is automated, and the human's job is to watch the automation for its own comfort. And those humans have time to plant more herbs, to run longer experiments with soil microbes, to run new recipes for nutrient solutions that pamper tomatoes, and to write letters or record messages for someone who is yet to be born and will someday read about the old days when tomato vines had to be persuaded with music and light. If you pause to think about Venus in 100 years, perhaps the floating habitats feel larger and more reliable. Their envelope materials are better at resisting the acidic mist. The surfaces are ever smoother. The chemistries hum as contentedly as a refrigerator in a kitchen. Outside, sunlight remains softened by the cloud deck, and inside, gentle artificial light follows the pattern that feels most kind to the body. The drift of everyday life continues to be made of checks and balances, of tidy coils of rope, of gentle burns of thrusters that keep the craft centered where it likes to be. You might wander then to para-terraforming ideas, domes and covered canyons on Mars. The architecture here is molded to the gentle physics of pressure. Curves are loved. Occasional small pops or creaks are studied. They become part of the mental map of the place, known and harmless. People repaint seals with attention. People grease slide rails until motion feels like butter. They fix small chips in glass with clear resin that cures under ultraviolet light into a smooth, invisible patch. The resin smells faintly floral. The gentle rhythm continues. Back in Earth orbit, even the idea of building a large shade or lens is made of small steps. A tether is paid out. The tether hums with a low tone that you feel through your gloves. It is not threatening. It is reassuring, like a cat purring. The solar arrays rotate to adjust to the sun. The rate is slow. The light across the panels slides softly. The panels themselves are cleaned by small crawling robots that move politely, stepping over edges, pausing when they meet each other, waiting, then continuing. All of this tedium is not a flaw. It is the shape of the reality that actually builds things. It is the reason things last. It is the reason a habitat might remain stable through a dust storm that we imagine as wild, but inside, sounds small dings on a railing. They make a list, and they do not mind adding a task to the next afternoon, because the list is their companion, and the tasks are their song. The gentle rhythm continues. There is also bureaucracy in the soft sense. Files are kept cleanly. Safety sheets are updated with revisions that are less glamorous than a rocket launch, but no less important in a system that extends over years. Names appear on a list beside the phrase, "trained on new procedure," and these names are people with patient faces and steady hands. Meetings happen seated around a table with simply printed agendas. The talk cycles slowly. People nod. Someone passes around a tin of soft cookies. People choose one politely, and the tin clicks quietly as the lid is replaced. This is how a planetary scale project breathes. It breathes in the small loops that close each day. It breathes in sky that does not change much from one day to the next, and in soil whose habit becomes simpler under careful attention. It breathes in logs, in graphs that rise and fall softly, in maintenance that happens before failure. It breathes in consistent meals and consistent sleep and light that changes in ways that the body likes. It breathes in routines that free the mind to wander gently. The gentle rhythm continues. You think for a moment of a long, slow book. Terraforming is that kind of book. The chapters do not end with exclamations. They end with a simple reaching of a page, turn at just the right time. The storyteller is patient. The reader relaxes. If a page is about the viscosity of water at a certain temperature in a certain tube, that page is not to be skipped, because it matters to the last chapter, where the picture is one of comfortable living in a place that used to resist comfort. In the evening, a caretaker might sit in a little library corner under a lamp that glows like a late afternoon sun and write a small note for someone who will take the next shift. The note might say something like, "Panel 12 has a small rattle when the wind is from the west at sunset. It is harmless, but the noise can be distracting. If you rest your palm on the frame while you read, the vibration is absorbed and the sound fades. Also, the mint in bed 3 smells especially good today." That is the tone of a long project. It is intimate and practical, not grand. The gentle rhythm continues. If you close your eyes now and feel the hum under your feet, you might picture small things all over the galaxy quietly achieving what they were designed to achieve. Fans turn, fluids flow, strands of DNA replicate under the supervision of enzymes that are older than mountains. People fit pipes, people strip wire, people write. None of this asks for applause. All of it deserves gratitude. Imagine the last thought of the day in a place that cares for a slowly changing world. The caretaker tidies their station. They return a pen to the exact spot where it belongs. They check the list. There is a small box to tick, and the box is ticked. They stand up, stretch, and feel a quiet satisfaction, the kind that sleeps well. They turn off a light. It goes out without a sound. They walk through a corridor irritated gently by the soft breeze of an air circulation system. step into their quarters, where the light is low and warm. They sit, breathe slowly, and drift. The gentle rhythm continues. If you are listening in the dark, perhaps on your own quiet evening, know that long projects have room for you. They have room for your calm contribution, for your tidy handwriting, for your gentle way of placing a tool on a bench. They take what you give and stitch it into something that lives beyond you. That is not failure. That is comfort. The best work is like a quilt. The maker does not always sleep under it, but someone will, and they will be warm. Terraforming will not happen in the ark of a hero, standing on a crest, shouting at the wind. It will happen in the ark of a caretaker, bending over a tray, wiping a small spill, noticing a neglected corner, and tending it. The planet responds slowly, like a shy friend. It needs to be wooed, not conquered. Plants go first in pockets. Air thickens in pockets. Pockets connect. Shelters grow into neighborhoods that share resources, and neighborhoods grow into towns under cover, and towns expand like tree rings. The curve of the world remains indifferent to the timeline. People adjust, not it. The gentle rhythm continues. Each generation will leave notes. The notes will be in 1,000 hands, some neat, some a little hurried, all familiar. Future caretakers will run fingers over grooves worn into handles by hands long gone. They will be grateful for the grooves. They will update the notes with new materials, new procedures. The highest compliment they can pay to their predecessors is to say, "We did this the same, and it still works. And also we did this differently, and it works better," both with quiet pride. When you next hear someone say terraforming, you can picture a panorama of small rooms with people in them doing basic things well. A room with a plant bed and a moisture meter. A room with a coil and a multimeter. A room with a computer running simulations. Its cooling fans a soft white noise. A room with a compressor that starts and stops with a muffled click. A room that is a kitchen where someone kneads dough and watches the window frost from the difference between outside and inside. All these rooms share air in ducts that are lovingly maintained. It may sound like a day at a factory or a lab. That is accurate. But to live in a factory or a lab where the output is comfort and the product is safety is not a small thing. It is lovely. It means sleeps are deep. Conversations are steady. The soundscape is humming. No heavy beats. The lightscape is gentle. No harsh glare. The foodscape is simple and reliable, favoring soups that steam gently, breads that cool on racks, teas that warm hands and hearts. The gentle rhythm trend before it grows into a problem. The hero is the person who simmers a pot of soup on a day when the wind outside is firm and gritty. The hero sits, sighs happily, and knows that tedium done with care is a gift to everyone breathing inside a pressurized room. If you are almost asleep, let your breath and the hum of this story align. Imagine that you too have a small checklist, something soothing: brush teeth, set cup by bed, dim lights, straighten blanket. Note one thing you are grateful for: rest. Imagine someone 100 years from now doing their checklist in a room on Mars, perhaps writing that the tomatoes were especially sweet this week, that the algae ran a little fast, that the view of the sunset had a pale blue line at the horizon, which is a reward for eyes that have looked at rust for months. That person goes to sleep. Their list waits for morning. The gentle rhythm continues. If your mind returns to the deeper science for a moment before it lets go, remember the numbers they love to see. Slight increases in partial pressure of oxygen where expected, stable partial pressure of nitrogen, carbon dioxide within plant-forward ranges, temperatures in domes not drifting beyond comfort bands, humidity where paper still feels crisp and lungs feel moist. Think of the quiet adjustments to reflectivity or emissivity of surfaces under a softly warming new sun. Think of the gentle rounding off of sharp corners by time in both rocks and routines. And when the project touches the sky at scale, borders dissolve into supply chains of components and spare parts, assembled with patience. A shade of 500,000 panels is only 500,000 small jobs that were done carefully and politely. A sky lattice around a planet is only 1,000,000 attachments that were tightened by hand and checked twice. A sealed habitat is only a mesh of seals and gaskets and air handlers in good condition. When one fails, which it will occasionally, replacement is not a drama. It is a planned, timed, practiced dance. In the end, if a future child runs across a floor in one of those habitats with feet that sound like soft drum beats, if their laughter echoes just a little in a round, glassy space, if their breath fogs a window for a moment while outside, frost draws delicate ferns on the soil, everything will be worth the tedium. That moment is not staged. It happens because everything else was done again and again the right way, by people who did not need a medal, just a good night's sleep. The gentle rhythm continues. For now, come back gently to your room, where you are safe and warm. Hear whatever hum lives in your space: a heater, a fan, a quiet street beyond the window. Feel the weight of your blanket, steady and persuasive. Your breath is the tempo of a well-tuned life. Your own small rituals are meaningful. You are part of the human story that prizes care over spectacle.